So hi, I'm Emily, and this is Alice. It's my little sweetie Alice. She decided to come to the chair today and take a nap. It's one of her favorite spots. This is usually also the the chair I sit in when I'm playing a video game, and she'll sit right behind me. She's the best little companion. So this video is more of like a catch-up / review chat for me. I'm not gonna get into anything like spoilery, because last year, I think like January of 2023, I picked up Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. I picked up the next two, and then I didn't actually read them for another 12 months because I got into other series, and like they've just been waiting. That was not intentional. I did not mean to do that, but I read Shadow of Self January of 2024, like a full 12 months, and I just finished Bands of Mourning in like February or so. So I wanted to make like this is like a catch-up for myself so that the next video, probably not the one directly after this, but later on, I'm gonna do the Lost Metal book and like my overall thoughts and conclusions. So this video is more of like a review, but also just like vibe check for the first 3 books. Is Alice leaving? Aw, you leaving? I think I was talking too much, so she left. But for Alloy, Shadow, and Bands, just short forms, for those 3, like we know Sanderson is like a solid writer, right? He knows what he's doing, and he'll probably write a whole other draft and publish it within the span of this video. He knows what he's doing, and he knew what he was doing with this series too, because Mistborn Era 2, the second era of the Mistborn books, this like sequel series after, you know, like Vin and Elend and all of them, the Mistborn books, yeah, he knew what he was doing, and this is fascinating. This does feel like the same world that Vin and Elend were in like 300 years ago now. They're like historical figures now. They're being talked about in classrooms and like worshipped as deities. It's weird, but also kind of makes sense when you know like human nature. It's really cool. But this world has evolved into like the 1920s kind of era kind of feel, because like they've made pistols. They can make pistols, which is so much fun with the metal bending. Allomancy. I know it's called allomancy, it's not metal bending. But they invented pistols. They are discovering cars and figuring out like that kind of locomotion. They have trains, and they're discovering like the radio. And like I know this is just me, but I have been like devouring Regency era, Victorian era, 1800s, early 1900s. I've been eating that up. And this also has like steampunk vibes. Minus the fantastical elements you kind of expect with a steampunk. It has, because like steampunk I feel has 1920s Regency era, like a coating or like a base of 1920s. This has that 1920s-ness with some like steampunky elements. It's a vibe, it's a feeling that's there. But other than like, you know, like vibes, there's actual details in here that I appreciate are in here because of human nature and human evolution and how cities are built even, and just how humanity evolves and changes. There's always similar problems that pop up, right? Well, remember with like Vin and Elend, there was the whole like nobles in the ska? Well, we kind of still have a similar problem. There's still class divisions. Because as much as we hate it, human nature and progression kind of just does that, because we as a collective in capitalism don't know any other way. And this world doesn't shy away from that. And I mostly just feel bad for Vin and Elend. Like, they named the city after Elend. I feel bad for them because they achieved what they wanted to achieve, and they knew the world was going to be okay, and things are better than it was back then, but it's not the utopia they were hoping for, because humanity doesn't really let that happen. And this idea of the utopia, this central city, it's constantly being questioned. Okay, I feel like I haven't really talked about anything other than like the vibes and the world building, which we know Sanderson can do, because characters are also just as important. And again, Sanderson knew what he was doing, because Wax, his name is Wax, I'll admit, I find it a little strange. His nickname is Wax. I love him. He's so cool. He's like this gunslinging cowboy detective man in the big city who's more comfortable off fighting crimes than he is dealing with his like noble responsibilities, because he's a nobleman. He's unintentionally hilarious, but relatable. But the other character, Wayne, because this is like the Wax and Wayne, I was gonna say trilogy, there's 4 books. I always do that. In the Wax and Wayne series, Wayne feels like he's purposefully putting up a caricature of himself. Hear me out. That sounds weird, but you can tell he's a person who's hiding things from himself even, and he's putting up a bit of a front. Not entirely, but a bit, but it's strong, it's there. Because there was this traumatic moment in his past that changed him, altered him. It was his fault, it was pretty bad. And he's letting that guilt sit there and eat at him and fester, and he is working to better himself, to do better and make up for what he did, but he's not letting himself heal and move on from it. Yes, it was bad, but after decades of just sitting with that guilt and letting even aspects of the world and like the family also just hound him, dude, at some point, you need to forgive yourself for some things. But he's letting so much guilt of it keep him stuck in a state mentally. He's actively doing better with his detective work, but he's not letting himself evolve from that moment. He also has this trait, which I think leads into the caricatureness, because I think he knows what he's doing. He has this little trait, this little quirk of his, where he'll steal things, anything. He'll steal things, but he thinks it's fine because he leaves something behind as like a trade. He's used literal garbage and tried to use a rat tail at one point to just take stuff. Like, he has to know what's actually stealing, right? He's not an idiot. He has to know what he's doing in that point, right? He has to, because that is what I mean by the caricaturedness. It doesn't mesh well with his, like, guilt-riddenness. So along with our boys, we also have Marassi and Steris. I feel like I'm just doing like a character analysis breakdown, but I'm also okay with that. Marassi has this great arc of becoming more like self-confident in herself and using her powers in a creative way and actively becoming like a constable within the city to do good and really help people. And her setup and backstory is interesting, and she has that arc. But I also feel like set up an alloy really established in like Shadow and like achieved in Bands, I feel. Her arc is like set up and everything and like achieved and she stays there. I feel like her arc is already complete in these 3 books, which is fine. And then there's Steris, who was fascinating because I would argue she doesn't really have a character arc, but she's okay with that. Steris doesn't really have a character arc, and I think she's okay with that, like I said, but it's almost like she prides herself in that a little bit too, in like a mild sense. I think because she's so self-aware. She knows how to navigate the noble requirements of like her station, even her gender. And she's even directing Wax a little bit through it because he's less experienced there. And she plans, she makes lists, she plans accordingly, she makes contingency plans to the point where if things go like weird and off the rails, which she has somehow also planned for, she has contingency and backup plans on the backup plans. She finds it thrilling though, which is fun. She's like such a type A planner personality type. But if things go, like I said, if things go off the rails, she's fine with it because she's planned accordingly somehow. She is so set in her like rigid lists and how extensive those lists are. She can be fluid at the same time. And with all of that, she doesn't think she's useful. She doesn't think she's useful at all. This woman does not have one iota of an ego. And it's kind of fascinating because usually it's like the opposite. I'm not getting into like plot stuff or like specific moments, but I really started loving Steris as probably one of my favorite characters in like Shadow of Self. And that was really just solidified for me in Bands of Mourning. She's great. I'm excited to see where she goes. So I haven't talked about the plots yet, which is kind of intentional because this is more of like a catch up for me. And it's like 3 whole books. I don't want to spoil all of the details in book 3 when you're not going to pick up when you might pick up book 1. But one element I will bring up, which is technically plot relevant, but also character relevant. It's Wax's dynamic with his religion and literally talking to actual God. I swear it makes sense. And that dynamic is one of the best things in here. And I absolutely loved Shadow of Self because of that. All of that and the reveals partway through and his anger at those reveals and just the specific ending. Shadow of Self was my favorite. I cannot wait to dive into Lost Metal, and I swear it's not going to be within 12 months. I'm going to go pick it up soon. But at the moment, I just finished Blood of Olympus by Rick Riordan. It's finally on my little shelf here. I got all 5. And I started reading the finale to the graphic novel Huki. I've got the 3rd volume by Miriam Tour, and things are getting dark. I'm excited to see what happens there. I am finishing so many series in the next few days. I'm that's honestly good because there's been a few on my list and more that I want to get into, and I want to try some standalones. So I'm glad I'm finally capping off some series. But in the meantime, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to get some editing done, maybe work on that short. I've been working on this little short story, this like short horror story, typing up the first draft. So far I've only got like 3,000 words, but it's expanding. I'm playing with that. And actually, if you want to check out some of my own writings or even just like support the little growing channel, we're almost at 1,000 subscribers. Thank you, yay! But if you want to check out some of my writings or just support the growing channel, like I said, I do have a Ko-fi. I also have Discord. Should probably mention that I do have a Discord. And if you join the Ko-fi, we have a book club and we're on the Discord. So, but yeah, I'm off. Feel free to like and subscribe, leave a comment. What's your favorite Sanderson book? I feel like that's one of those YouTuber hook comment things. But I'm honestly curious, out of the amount of things that he's written, which one is your favorite so far? Because right now, mine is Shadow of Self. And probably like the first Mistborn book. But yeah, let me know, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye then!